Gentlemen, we'll be talking about the felony murder rule, which is the extension of what I was talking about in my videos on homicide. The malice within the crime of murder has 4 types of malices. Remember, the intent to kill, express malice, the intent to cause serious bodily injury, implied malice, wanton and reckless conduct, which is just the criminal being very, very negligent and then causing the death of another. And lastly, like we're talking about right now, is the felony murder rule. The felony murder rule is very interesting because it has a common law meaning and also a modern law meaning. So let's get into it right now. So the felony murder rule means that any homicide committed in the perpetration in an inherently dangerous felony can make someone liable for murder. The split I was talking about with common law and modern law is the types of felonies that one has to commit in order to be liable for the mens rea of murder. So I wrote that over here. I put CL for common law. I wrote down bar room kiss. That's what it's short for. And every single one of these letters has a certain meaning. We have burglary, arson, rape, robbery, mayhem, kidnapping, sodomy, sexual molestation. And the most common on exams, I would say, would be burglary and robbery. Those are the top 2. In MBEs, it can be them all. So I will study each and every one and think about when the defendant actually commits one of these felonies and someone dies in the perpetration of it. That's very critical when you think about the common law jurisdictions of your exam or an MBE. Furthermore, just as I said, we have a modern law jurisdiction in relation to the felony murder rule. We have BARK, B-A-R-R-K, burglary, arson, rape, robbery, and lastly, kidnapping. If a defendant commits any of those felonies or one or more of those felonies and someone dies in the perpetration of one of those felonies under the modern law, that defendant could be liable for murder. So let's get into the subheadings of what the felony murder rule means. So within the felony murder rule, we have a rule statement that we just talked about. I'll say it again. Any homicide committed in the perpetration of an inherently dangerous felony, which means, as I said, the defendant commits a felony in some way, somehow, in the perpetration of committing that felony, someone dies. So the subheadings I want to get into is basically subheading 1, place of safety. So the homicide actually must happen in the perpetration of that felony, which means that if A commits a robbery with B and they're both in the bank ready to steal the money from the bank, they're committing that robbery, someone must die during that moment of the felony. If the defendants end up reaching a place of safety, which is what I wrote here, place of safety, and someone dies in their place of safety, which means that they are complete. The crime is complete. That's what I'm trying to say. The crime is completed at the place of safety. Again, this homicide must happen in the perpetration of an inherently dangerous felony. So if the robbery, as I said, A and B committed a robbery, if someone dies in the perpetration of that robbery, then A and B could be liable for murder. However, if A and B take the cash, go in the car, and drive home, and they reach a place of safety, which would be their home or their hideout or whatever the case may be, as long as the crime is completed, the felony is completed, they reach a place of safety, and if someone ends up dying, a victim, a bystander, whatever the case, ends up getting killed at the place of safety, the defendants, A and B, cannot be liable for murder because it's not in the perpetration of their inherently dangerous felony anymore because the crime is completed. Let's get into exactly what I just said earlier, is that this is important to know on your criminal law exam, is that this is technically the mens rea of murder. As I said, murder has 4 critical things to know about within malice. We have intent to kill, express malice. We have the intent to cause serious bodily injury, implied malice, wanton or reckless conduct, and lastly, the felony murder rule, which I call FMR for short. So knowing exactly what the felony murder rule means, and knowing exactly what the common law jurisdiction states, and what the modern law jurisdiction states in terms of the type of felonies that needs to be committed in order for a defendant to be liable, is very critical. Because if the defendant happened to commit, let's say, sodomy in modern law, and someone dies in the perpetration of that sodomy, the defendant will not be liable under a modern law jurisdiction, because the modern law doesn't count sodomy or sexual molestation as inherently dangerous felonies anymore. That's important to know. So I hope that this video really helps you understand what the felony murder rule means and exactly what the mens rea of murder, remember the malice piece of it, is required in order to be liable for felony murder rule and also murder. Thank you so much for watching.